They fired me with a text message while I was standing in a hotel lobby in South America, and I remember thinking the marble floor under my shoes felt steadier than my entire life at that moment. Before I continue, please click the subscribe button. Now the message said, "We are cutting you loose. Your company card is canceled. Figure out how to get home yourself, loser." I read it again and again, not because I didn't understand it, but because my brain refused to accept it. People walked past me speaking Spanish, rolling suitcases, laughing, checking in, living normal lives, while mine just fell apart. My phone felt heavy in my hand, like it was the thing that finally pushed me under. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't even swear. I just stood there, then sat on a bench and tried to remember how breathing worked. My name is Ryan. I am 31 years old, from Ohio, and until that moment I thought I was just another replaceable guy trying to do his job well enough to survive. I had $40 in my wallet. My return flight was booked on the company account, and my card was already dead. I was thousands of miles from home with nothing but a text telling me I meant nothing. Let me back up. I worked for a luxury accessories company called Calder Row. They sold bags that cost more than my rent. I wasn't a designer or an executive. I was a sourcing coordinator, which meant I found the people who made the materials, leather, fabric, hard, where all the things the designers needed. The job paid enough to keep my life together, and I was good at it. Not loud, not flashy, just good. I talked to suppliers like humans. I remembered names, birthdays, kids' stories. That is how trust is built. My boss was named Victor. He loved power, loved reminding people how replaceable they were. He wore expensive shoes and talked down to everyone who didn't. He liked to say things like, "You should be grateful to be here." I swallowed it because I needed the job. 2 months before that text, Victor called me into his office and said our leather supplier in Argentina was threatening to walk away. He didn't ask why, he just said, "Fix it." Then he told me to fly there and handle it. 3 weeks, may be more. I told him I had family commitments. He said, "Figure it out." So I flew to Argentina. The supplier was a family business outside the city, run by a man named Mateo and his wife Elena. Their workshop smelled like leather and history. They were proud people, tired of being treated like machines. Mateo told me, "Your company keeps demanding more and paying less, like we are disposable." I listened. I didn't argue. I spent days talking numbers, timelines, respect. That word came up a lot. Respect. I built a deal that worked for both sides. Realistic production schedules, fair payment guarantees that protected everyone. Mateo trusted me enough to insist that I be the only contact person in the agreement. I thought it was just preference at the time. I didn't realize it was protection. Victor kept messaging me, rushing me, pushing me, complaining. When he joined a call, he talked over everyone, made jokes that landed wrong, treated Mateo like an employee instead of a partner. After one call, Mateo looked at me and said that man has no respect. I didn't defend Victor because I couldn't. 3 weeks in, the deal was ready, worth millions, and set to be signed the next morning. That night, my phone buzzed in the hotel lobby and everything changed. That was when I realized the same people who rely on your work will drop you the second they think you are inconvenient. And I had no idea yet that this text message was about to destroy my old life and build something far bigger than I ever imagined. I sat on that bench in the hotel lobby for a long time, watching people come and go, families, couples, business travelers, all of them moving with purpose, while I felt frozen. I kept thinking about home, about my little sister, who thought I was on some important business trip, about how I was supposed to be flying back next week with gifts and stories, and instead I was stuck with $40 and no plan. I checked my card again, Even though I knew it wouldn't work, it didn't. At some point, something shifted inside me, not anger, not panic, something colder, clearer. I opened my bag and saw the folder inside the unsigned agreement. The one worth millions, the one Matteo refused to sign without me listed as the main contact. That was when I stood up. I took the bus back to the workshop. Even though it was late, even though my legs felt weak, the lights were still on when I arrived. Matteo and Elena were inside finishing paperwork. They looked surprised when they saw me. What happened? Matteo asked. One look at my face told him it was good. They fired me, I said quietly. Cancelled. My card told me to get home on my own. Elena covered her mouth. Matteo clenched his jaw. After everything he said, I told them I still had enough cash for a couple nights, and then I would figure something out. Matteo and Elena exchanged one of those looks couples share without words. Then Matteo asked something that caught me off guard. What do you want to do about the agreement? I didn't understand at first. I told him I didn't work for Calder Row anymore. He nodded slowly. Exactly. He said, this agreement requires you. You are the point person. Without you, there is no deal. That was when it hit me. The paperwork wasn't just symbolic. It was binding. Matteo had insisted on language that made me essential because he saw how Victor treated people, and he didn't want that anywhere near his family business. They will send someone else. I said, let them try. Matteo replied, we will not work with them. Then Elena added something that changed everything. Another company has been contacting us, Aurora Vale. They offered better terms, but we stayed loyal because of you, because of trust. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to say. I had never been in a room where people chose me over power, over money, over fear. Matteo looked at me and said they asked if we knew someone who could manage international sourcing, someone who understands people, not just numbers. I know someone now. I told them I needed stability, that I couldn't gamble. Matteo shook his head. This is not gambling. He said, this is you finally taking what you earned. They offered me the guest room for the night. I slept better there than I had in weeks. In morning, Matteo made 2 calls, one to Aurora Vale and one to Victor. I sat there while he put Victor on speaker. Matteo said there would be no signing. Victor argued, threatened, tried to negotiate. Matteo didn't raise his voice. Once he said the agreement was built on respect, and that respect was broken. Then he ended the call. An hour later, I was in a car sent by Aurora Vale, heading to a meeting. I didn't feel ready, for I felt underdressed, unsure, like I didn't belong. But the woman who met me listened, really listened. She asked about my work, my approach, my values. She didn't interrupt. She didn't talk down. By the end of the meeting, she asked what I needed to make this work. No one had ever asked me that. That night, my phone exploded with messages from Victor. Anger, then threats, then apologies. I didn't answer any of them. The next morning, Matteo drove me to the airport himself and handed me a ticket home. He said, go see your family, then come back and build something better. As the plane lifted off, I realized something important. The moment they tried to leave me stranded was the moment I stopped being trapped, and I had no idea yet how badly my old company was about to regret calling me disposable. I landed back home exhausted but lighter, like something heavy had been cut loose without me realizing how much it weighed. My sister picked me up from the airport and kept glancing at me while driving, like she was trying to recognize a different version of her brother. I told her everything on the way home, about the text, the workshop, the deal falling apart, and somehow turning into something else. She didn't interrupt, she just listened. And when I finished, she said one thing, I'm proud of you. That night, I lay in my childhood room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how close I came to begging for my job back, how easy it would have been to apologize for something that was my fault just to feel safe again. I realized how often people like Victor rely on fear, not skill, to stay in control. 2 days later, Aurora Vale sent over the formal offer. The numbers shocked me not because they were outrageous, but because they reflected what my work was actually worth. They included flexible travel support, housing when abroad, and the ability to work remotely, so I could be home more often. I accepted without hesitation. When I returned to Argentina, everything felt different. I wasn't rushing buses or counting coins. I had a car, a decent apartment, and a schedule that respected my time. Matteo and Elena welcomed me like family. They introduced me to their workers as a partner, not a middleman. That word mattered. The work itself was familiar, but the environment wasn't. People listened when I raised concerns. They adjusted when I suggested improvements. They tested them. Aurora Vale treated suppliers like collaborators, and it showed productivity, improved quality, improved trust, deepened within weeks. I expanded sourcing beyond leather. We brought in fabric from Peru, hardware from India, and specialty dyes from small workshops that had never worked with luxury brands before. Every relationship was built the same way: honesty, clarity, respect. Back at Calder, things were unraveling. I didn't hear it directly, but industries talk, suppliers talk, designers complain. I learned they scrambled to replace Matteo, but failed. The materials didn't meet standards, deadlines slipped, retail partners noticed, orders were returned. Victor tried to reach me through others, first a polite message, then an offer, then frustration. I ignored all of it. The silence felt powerful. 3 months later, Aurora Vale launched their spring collection. Everything I touched was part of it. Every bag carried a story, from a workshop to a family to a craft passed down generations. The collection sold out in weeks. Reviews called it authentic, refined, different. My director called me into her office and told me the numbers. Then she offered me a promotion, global sourcing lead with long-term authority and decision power. I said yes. Before she finished that night, I called Matteo. He laughed loudly and said, "I told you, they never lose the good ones, they lose the ones they mistreat." Mean. While Calder Row kept sinking without the right material, their reputation collapsed. Retailers pulled out, lawsuits followed. Victor was removed quietly. No announcement, no praise, just gone. I didn't feel joy hearing that. I felt confirmation that walking away was the right choice. Months later, I stood in Aurora Vale's new flagship store back in States, surrounded by people admiring products that existed because of choices I made. I realized something. Then power doesn't come from titles or threats. Power comes from being the person others choose when they have options. And the man who once called me a loser had no idea yet that this was only the beginning of what choosing myself would create. The promotion changed more than my title. It changed how I saw myself. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for permission to exist in a room. I was trusted to make decisions that affected people across continents. That responsibility didn't scare me. It grounded me. I traveled constantly, but differently now. I wasn't rushing through meetings trying to prove my worth. I was building systems that worked long term. I helped small suppliers scale without losing their identity. I pushed back when executives wanted speed over quality. And instead of being dismissed, I was heard. Aurora Vale grew fast, but carefully. We didn't chase trends. We invested in people. Suppliers stayed loyal, not because contracts trapped them, but because respect kept them. The difference showed in every product. One afternoon, while I was in New York finalizing fall materials, my director forwarded me an article. The headline read, "Calder Row struggles after failed spring line." The piece didn't mention me by name, but I recognized every detail: a missing supplier, rushed replacements, declining quality, internal chaos. I closed the article and felt nothing, not satisfaction, not anger, just distance, like reading about a life I had already left behind. A week later, Victor emailed me from a personal account. The message was long, apologetic, careful. He wrote about misunderstandings, about pressure, about how things got out of hand. He asked if we could talk. I deleted it without responding, not out of spite, but because the conversation would have been about easing his guilt, not acknowledging my value. Around that time, Aurora Vale opened its first flagship store. The night of the opening, I walked through the space, slowly touching displays, watching customers react. They didn't know the names of the suppliers or the negotiations behind the scenes, but they felt the difference. They stayed longer, asked questions, appreciated craftsmanship. A reporter asked me what set Aurora Vale apart. I said, we treat people like partners, not resources. That quote ended up everywhere later that evening. My sister came to the opening. She looked around and said, you did this not alone. I said, but I helped connect the right people. That sentence stayed with me. Months passed. The company expanded globally. We created supplier councils, profit sharing models, and long-term development programs. People stopped leaving because they had no reason to. Then one day, Matteo called me. His voice sounded older, softer. He said he was retiring and passing the business to his son. He thanked me for changing how his family worked with global brands. I told him he had changed my life too. At the retirement celebration, he pulled me aside and said something I will never forget. He said, the real test of leadership is not how much power you collect, but how many people stand with you when you have none. I thought back to that hotel lobby, to the canceled card, to $40 and a bench near the door. I had nothing then except my integrity, and that turned out to be enough. Years later, when new hires ask me for advice, I tell them this: if someone only values you when you are useful, they never valued you at all. Choose places that choose you, because the moment you stop saving people who treat you as disposable, you discover how powerful you actually are. And the next part of this story is where everything finally comes full circle. Time has a strange way of reshaping memories. The fear from that hotel lobby feels distant now, but I remember it clearly enough to never forget what powerlessness feels like. That memory keeps me grounded. It reminds me why I work the way I do. Aurora Vale didn't just grow, it matured. We stopped being the new name and became the standard. Other brands started copying our sourcing model, calling it ethical luxury, but most of them missed the point. Ethics isn't a marketing angle, it's a daily choice. I spent more time mentoring younger coordinators, especially those who reminded me of myself. Quiet, hardworking, overlooked. I taught them how to negotiate without aggression, how to listen more than they talk, how to walk away from deals that compromise respect. Some of them asked why I cared so much. I told them, because nobody did it for me. One of those coordinators later told me she turned down an offer from another company because they spoke badly about suppliers during the interview. She said she heard my voice in her head, telling her that people show you who they are early. That moment meant more to me than any bonus. Meanwhile, the industry kept talking. Calder Rowe officially shut down their accessories division. The brand name still existed, but only as a shadow. Licensing deals, discount lines. No soul. People whispered about mismanagement, arrogance, and one executive who burned bridges too fast. I ran into Victor once by accident at a trade event. He looked smaller, not physically, just diminished. His suit was cheaper, his confidence gone. He recognized me instantly. He started to speak, then stopped. I nodded once and kept walking, not because I was above him, but because I had nothing left to prove. That night, I couldn't sleep. I realized closure doesn't come from confrontation, it comes from growth. Aurora Vale invited me onto the executive board, not as a favor, but because my systems were now central to the company's success. I accepted on one condition: that supplier representation would always have a voice. They agreed without hesitation. We launched initiatives that funded education, healthcare, and infrastructure in supplier communities, not charity partnership. When one workshop burned down in Peru, we rebuilt it together. When shipping delays hit India, we absorbed costs instead of punishing families. People noticed loyalty deepened, quality soared. At a global conference, I was asked to speak about leadership. I told the story without names, without drama, just the truth about being discarded and choosing not to crawl back. I watched faces change in the audience. I knew some of them recognized themselves. After the talk, a young man approached me and said, "My company treats me the same way. What should I do?" I told him, "Prepare your eggs. It carefully, then leave without guilt." That advice spread faster than I expected. Months later, Aurora Vale opened a second flagship. This time I wasn't nervous. I walked through the space, knowing exactly what it represented: hundreds of hands across the world, connected through trust. That night, I stood outside the store alone, after closing lights, reflecting off the windows. I thought about the text message that started everything. The word loser. I smiled at the irony, because losing a job that never respected you is actually how you start winning your life back. And the final part of this story begins with a question I never thought I'd be able to answer honestly. What does success really look like now? Success used to mean survival. For me, paying rent, keeping my job, staying invisible enough to avoid trouble. I thought stability was the reward for obedience. I was wrong. Real success feels quieter. It feels like waking up without dread. It feels like knowing your voice will be heard before you speak. It feels like being trusted when you are not in the room. Years after everything changed, I was asked that question in an interview: "What does success look like for you now?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the hotel lobby, the bench, the canceled card, the fear. I thought about how close I came to apologizing for someone else's cruelty just to feel safe. Then I answered, success is never begging for respect again. Aurora Vale continued to grow, but I stopped measuring my worth by numbers alone. I measured it by how many people stayed, how many partnerships lasted, how many suppliers told me they felt proud of their work again. Mateo's son runs the workshop now. He calls me brother. We still argue about timelines and prices, but we argue with trust underneath it. We laugh. After we solve things, sometimes new executives join and try to rush processes. I stop them, not with anger, just clarity. I tell them this works because people are treated like humans. If that changes, I leave the room. Always goes quiet. And then they listen. I never had that power before, but it turns out power is given. It's claimed the moment you stop accepting less. I keep the old phone I had back then, the one that received that text. I never deleted the message, not because it hurts, but because it reminds me that the worst moment of my career was actually the best turning point of my life. Young employees come to me now asking for advice. They expect something complex: strategy, networking, leverage. I tell them something simple: if someone makes you feel small on purpose, they are not strong. If you are scared to leave, that fear is information. And if you ever get thrown away, do not rush to prove your worth to the people who did it. Prove it to yourself by building something better. Sometimes late at night, when I am alone in a hotel room in some far city, I think about the version of me sitting on that lobby bench staring at his phone. I wish I could sit next to him and say this: you are not lost, you are being redirected. The people who leave you stranded teach you how to stand on your own. The ones who call you disposable reveal how little They understand value, and the moment you choose yourself, everything changes. That company thought they erased me. They thought canceling a card canceled my future. They were wrong. They just removed the last chain, and I walked forward without looking back. That is the real ending, not revenge, not victory, just freedom.